Hey everybody, it's Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
And I'm done school.
So and that means that we're back here for episode 82 of the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast after a number of months. It's only been a couple weeks since you guys have seen us, but it's been several months since we've recorded because we finally ran out of pre-recorded episodes. So here we are, finally, going to talk about what today, Victoria?
We are going to review the Odyssey episode of the month, and by month we mean January, because it's obviously January.
Correct.
Which is the Journal of Aviary Whittaker.
Whittaker, yes, and?
And also Blackbeard's Treasure.
Yes. We thought...
We're doing Young Wit episodes.
Yeah, we thought... I've had this idea knocking around for a while that when it comes to the episodes that we choose to pair with our OAC episodes, instead of just theming them to the OAC episode for that month, doing more of a generalized theme with what episodes we pick. And so because we were doing this one, I thought, hey, let's do a bunch of Young Wit episodes. And we'd already done Thank You God way back in 2014, I think, or 2013. End of 2013, I guess.
Mm-mm.
Wow, that's a long time ago.
Yeah.
We reviewed that, so we're doing Blackbeard's Treasure after we do this one. But first, it's time for the news. So, for those of you who've been paying attention to the Adventures in Odyssey Facebook page, and also if you're friends with Chris Anthony or Katie Lee or a couple other people, you'll know that recording for album 62 has been going on in the last couple of days. I believe it started on the 18th, and it finished up today on the 21st.
Yep.
So we've learned a number of things between different people's Facebook posts that they've talked about who are there, as well as the official page. First off, I almost forgot to say this, but we finally know the last title for album 61, Without a Hitch. We know all of the titles for that now, all 6, and we know the order of them, ostensibly, according to AIOO Wiki. Someone, probably Nathan, will correct me if I'm wrong. So we have episodes 801, The Feud of Mason County, 802, Parker for President, 803, Old Tricks, that's the one we didn't know before, 804, The Key Suspect, and 805 and 806, which are Avery Bassett Wedding, parts 1 and 2. So, in terms of album 62, which does not have a title yet, we know 4 of the 6 episode titles now, which are Fathers and Sons, written by Phil Lawler, which will have Whit and Jason and someone named Wilson in it. We know there's going to be a new character with initials WK, maybe that's who that is. Connie the Counselor, they've been making lots of posts about. It's by Kathy Buchanan. It will include Katie Lee, Will Ryan, Shona Kennedy,
Yay!
Robbie Bruce, and Phil Proctor.
Wait, who plays Phil Proctor?
I don't know who he'll be playing. Probably Full House.
Oh, okay.
But Shona and Robbie will both be in that, who, of course, play...
Oh, you want me?
Yes, I was
okay.
gesturing to you.
They play Jules and Buck.
Yes.
Yeah.
There will be episodes...
Devin ship. I don't ship them.
No Friend Like an Old Friend, and The Grass is Always Greener. And we don't know anything more about those two.
Hey, Devin, you know who we need in some of these episodes?
Who?
Jeff Lewis.
That's true. You might be.
Yep.
So might Jay. Who knows? Pat Fraley was also at the recording sessions. He has played Dr. Warren in Midnight Ride, the revolutionary episode way back in album 14, and he was also St. Valentine in The Last I Do. So it's been a long time since he's been on the show.
Him.
So he was there. There is one episode by Phil, we don't know which, that will contain songs by Will Ryan.
What?
We're going to see Red Hollard's Machine Shop. Jason's going to have a mystery at J&J's, and I think there's a couple other assorted smaller details, but that's about all that we've gleaned about album 62 from that.
I am excited.
So that's still quite a ways off. That probably won't be on the OAC until this fall, and it won't be on the radio until a year from now, next spring. But that's that. And album 61 will probably be going up on the OAC fairly soon now that album 60 is aired on the radio.
Which album are you and I on right now?
Album 60.
Okay.
It's hard to keep track of things these days, isn't it?
I know. I don't. They're all coming out so quickly now.
Yeah, it's so fast, and there's all this overlap because the OAC and the radio, and when we're recording, when we're releasing, it honestly makes it really confusing.
Yeah, I might accidentally say something, and Devin might accidentally have to cut it out accidentally.
Yeah, that might have accidentally already happened during this video.
I'm very sorry about that.
I mean, people probably already heard this episodes by now, but, you know, in case they haven't.
Sorry.
Of much lesser news importance, I noticed on the OAC there is an album called the Ultimate Road Trip Collection, which is like one of those compilation albums that just has thematic albums together. It's 18 episodes long, and it's basically a 50% longer extended version of the old Drive Time album, which is one of the first albums that Victoria and I got. So they have travel-themed stories. I have a picture from the OAC. I'll throw it up on the screen right now. Why not? The description says, "Are you ready to embark on the ultimate road trip? Tag along with Wooten and Bernard as they journey to Alaska, follow Whit and Eugene to Mexico, or join the Barkley family as they travel to Florida, go skiing in the mountains, and even fly to Hawaii with the Rathbones. From summer camp to a mysterious ghost town, this exciting vacation package has something for everyone, including lots of stories about family togetherness." And
okay, let me think out don't say anything. So you already told me that Black Clouds is going to be in it from Connie and Joanne's road trip.
Yep.
I heard family vacation.
Correct, that's the first two.
Yeah. And you also said Barkley family ski trip.
Yep, it's number 6.
And it sounded like Mystery of Tin Flat.
Yeah, number 12.
And what else? Cross of Cortez.
Yep, 8 and 9.
And one about... I'm trying to remember all the descriptions you said. I'm guessing that the one where they... Oh, I'm trying to remember the titles, though. This is difficult.
Speaking of Victoria remembering things, we have a game to play later in our review of the Journal of Aviary Whittaker. That'll be fun.
Oh, no. I'm going to be bad at this game, aren't I?
Do you want me to say the rest of the titles now? So we can...
Yeah.
So, like you said, it was pretty good. You got almost all the ones that I mentioned descriptions of.
Like, there are some I could have said, but I wanted to get their titles, so I didn't say.
Yeah. So the 18 in order are Family Vacation, Parts 1 and 2, Our Best Vacation Ever, Camp Whatanut, Parts 1 and 2, The Barkley Family Ski Vacation, Train Ride, The Cross of Cortez, Parts 1 and 2, Feud for Thoughts. I think it's Feud for Thought. But
Feud for Thought.
It Happened at Four Corners, The Mystery at Tin Flat, Aloha Oi, Parts 1, 2, and 3. Odd that they put it then, because Mystery at Tin Flat should be, well, after that. So should Happen at Four Corners should also be after that. Who knows?
I think they just put them in a random order.
Basset Hounds, and Black Clouds, and The Champ the Camp.
So, can I just take this moment to say, because I don't think I've ever said it, What Happened at Four Corners is just such a, like, eerie episode,
I love that
isn't
episode.
it?
I really like it.
What did you say?
I really like it.
I know you like that episode, but I hate episodes I
really like that once you know what's going on and you re-listen to it, as soon as Bernard goes from narrating into, like, inside the actual story, if you listen closely, you can actually hear, like, this gentle harp transition fade.
I've probably noticed that, but I can't think of whether I have at the top of my head.
Okay.
Oh, and then they get hit by the car, like, and it interrupts the sound effect so you can barely hear it because it's timed really well.
Let us get into the Journal of John Avery Whittaker, which is episode 789, Fibonacci number, I might point out, I believe. Or is it 987? I can't. I'm a little rusty on my Fibonacci terms that are 3 digits long. Anyways, what happens in this episode, Victoria? It's very exciting.
Just a sec. I'm looking for... There it is.
What happens in the Journal of John Avery Whittaker?
I'm putting on this jacket to contrast my excitement for this episode, which was very high. Okay. So in this episode, we get the deets. We get the DL on Whit's entire childhood, and it was incredible, and I was screaming the whole time, and we got to hear his sister, who Devin's wanted to hear his entire life, and we got to hear Whit's mom, who I've wanted to hear my entire life. We got to hear his grandpa, and we got more from his stepmom, who's like the most lovely woman ever, and we got more of his dad, and we got Scotland, and we got like him moving, and we got young Jack, and we got Jack's mom, and we got explanation and mention of Jack's dad, and we got Whit's first ever crush,
and we got dates. We got dates for everything.
I know, it was like the most fan servicey episode ever, but it made me so happy.
It was.
And I'm probably I messed up the mic probably for all of that. It's probably going to be way too loud. But I'm not sorry, because this episode was incredible and I loved it. And I just got like this nice mug from Disneyland where we went to for Christmas. And when Whit's mom talked for the first time, I was holding my mug and I almost dropped it and shattered it along with a pitcher of water, because I was like, Whit's mom is talking, his actual biological mother. And I listened to that episode back to back like 6 times, like from the afternoon all the way to that night when I went to like get tickets for Deadpool and like go in. So we're like, I'm waiting to see Deadpool and I'm sitting there, I'm like listening to young Jack and young Whit talking, and I'm like, this is the best day of my life, not because of Deadpool, but because of this.
And you were real excited for the Deadpool movie.
And I was so excited for Deadpool. Like I have a poster of Deadpool on my wall, and I've been so excited. I've always wanted to make them to make a Deadpool movie, but the reason I was so happy that day was because of the episode. And yeah.
So
I can't.
Yeah, so it's only 42 seconds into the episode, and that's 42 seconds including like the intro with Chris talking, that like the OAC opening tag and everything. 42 seconds before it's like 10-year-old Whit, Fiona Dawn roll, Grandpa Jackson, King Lassie Scotland, all of that already that fast. And I was like, listening to it.
Got more of McDuff the dog, everyone's favorite character.
I was being like overloaded with everything. So we learned.
I was too.
We learned so much about Whit's childhood. So at this point now, he's 10. It's been 2 years now since Whit moved from Scotland, so he was 8 then. Janeth, Janneth, in case you're wondering how to spell that, was Whit's mom. We finally learned her name, and it's a J name. So was Whit's...
What's Whit's dad's name again? Harold?
Yeah.
Harold? Yeah.
Yeah, but Janeth's father is Jackson, too, so he was also a J name. So Whit obviously got it from his mother's side of the family.
I bet there's controversy over her married someone whose name didn't start with a J.
Probably. Jackson loved him anyways. But yeah, too bad Harold broke that pattern. But, you know, what can you do?
Harold, you ruined everything.
They didn't make him change his name. There's no commitment at all. So, Whit's mom... Sorry, there's a fly.
There's
Whit's
a fly
mom...
in here, too. Maybe it's the same fly.
Whit's mom died from smallpox. I was like, this is sad, but I'm so happy because we're learning so much. And then we find about Charlotte. Sister Charlotte. All of these years, I've been saying and saying and saying that Whit did have a sister. It was canon in My Brother's Keeper. Whit has a sister, and
I never doubted that Whit didn't have a sister.
Nobody believed me, even
I never
in the family.
said you were wrong.
In the family portrait thing, they're like, yeah, they said that, but we didn't really want that to be included. They kind of added that without like our approval and stuff. So it's like, and then they made it canon. He has a stepsister named Charlotte. Her name isn't Julie, like I thought, but it kind of makes sense because she's his stepsister. So
because she's from Harold. Actually, no.
No, she was from Fiona's family.
Never mind.
She wasn't. She wasn't from the J line, so it makes sense that her name wouldn't start with a J. I wonder where she was, and thank you God. I don't know.
Yeah, I know. That's like my only complaint about the episode, honestly, is I have 2 complaints. One, she wasn't in Thank You God, and 2, there was no mention of when Fiona went blind in this.
Yeah.
So, those were my only 2 complaints. Everything else about this episode was perfect and beautiful and made me want to cry tears of happiness.
Okay. Yeah, I was listening to this episode on the bus while I was going somewhere, and I'm like, honestly, if Whit had said his sister's name was Julie, I would have had an honest stroke on the bus.
You would have punched someone in the face.
I would have probably had a heart attack if he'd said his sister's name was Julie. I really liked how they made Townsend Coleman play Harold, because that means that like Jason's voice runs in the family, which is cool. I don't think that's what...
I didn't notice that he was playing Harold.
I don't think that's really what they were going after, but it's kind of cool because it's like, oh yeah, because it's his grandpa's voice. It's genetic.
That'd be so weird, like, if one day Whit's just like, you know, Jason, you have your grandfather's voice, and Jason's like, what does that even...
That's actually what I was... That's actually what I was going to say, that it's really sad to think of the fact that, like, Whit is constantly, like, reminded of his dad when he hears Jason speak.
You didn't have to make it sad, Devin.
I did have to make it sad.
What's wrong with you?
And then we can lighten it up by inserting an obligatory Jason's his own grandpa joke. And that'll lighten things up.
I'm my own grandpa.
Exactly.
It's great grandpa, though.
No.
Oh, wait, no, it is Harold. Never mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, they fixed the goof that was in Thank You God, where Whit said that Duke University was in Raleigh, North Carolina. Now they have it right in Durham. So that was fixed. That was good.
Can I just say really quick? The voices in this were, like, so on point, and I was so impressed. They got voice actors who sounded exactly like young Whit and young Jack in all the flashbacks, and the lady who plays Fiona and, like, Townsend as Harold, they all sound completely identical to how they sound in past episodes, and I was, like, floored while I was listening to it. Like, if you listen to this and then you listen to Thank You God and Blackbeard's Treasure,
yeah.
Like, especially Blackbeard's Treasure, the voices for Jack and Whit are, like, I cannot tell the difference between their voices. It was so perfect, and I was like,
Yeah, they did an amazing job at voice matching this
I wish it was this easy to voice match for Whit in general, whenever his actor gets replaced.
So we also learned that Durham is near where Harold grew up, so it makes me curious about what brought him to Scotland, and work probably, but that also makes it interesting knowing that the Whittaker side of the family is from America, or at least it was in Harold's generation, and that
explains his accent.
Yeah, it explains his accent. It explains more things relating to Whit's family in terms of Hear Me, and Blackbeard's Treasure.
And his name doesn't really sound too British.
He has
Scottish.
pointed out, though, in Rescue Manitoulin Point, Whit said that the name Whittaker was Scottish. So
well, I know that Whittaker's Scottish, but I mean, like, Harold doesn't sound like a very Scottish name.
It might be. I don't know. We learned that Charlotte's grandmother's name was Phyllis, so that's probably Fiona's mother, given that she has her diary. We found out about Whit's first crush, Lisa, which is really funny.
That part was, like, weird, because, like, that part gave me, like, a tiny heart attack when I first heard it. So, like, bear with me. So I'm listening, and then all of a sudden I hear, like, just this, like, transition music, and all is peaceful, and I'm, like, so happy listening to all this, and then Witch just like, oh my gosh, I'm under attack, I've been severely injured, and I'm just, like, listening, I'm so worried, I'm like, oh my gosh, what happened, did you get in an accident, did you fall off the roof, like, trying to invent things, I'm, like, so worried, and then I get this stupid sound effect, and then I was like, I've been hit by Cupid's arrow, I'm like, you little brat!
Yeah, there was two weird portions, the bit with Cupid and the bit with Wisdom that were, like,
yeah,
didn't really fit in with the rest of the episode.
No, it was like a weird tonal shift, and they kind of used very live show-y sound effects.
Yeah, it was weird.
Which I didn't like.
Anyways, I thought it was really funny how she's like, I don't believe in God. He's like, oh. And then back to turns to the camera, he's like, I dropped her like a hot potato. And I was like, man, young Whit was abrupt. Which is really interesting then to look at that in terms of development as a person, given that Whit apparently had a lot more trouble doing the same thing in college, according to what he said in First Love.
I like to think that he just got his dates mixed up, and that was actually the same person.
It was probably. There was a shout out to Laszlo Farnsworth. I was like, wow.
I know! Laszlo showed up, and I was like, okay, so I was listening to this episode in the morning, and then I was like driving to school, so I was driving to college, and then all of a sudden like I hear like Laszlo Farnsworth, and then so they don't say what his name is though, and he's picking on Jack, and I hear this kid being picked on. I'm like, hey, that sounds like young Jack. He's just like, yeah, Alan, and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's Jack. And then all of a sudden Whit comes up, he's like, hey, Laszlo, and I started screaming. I'm like, it's Laszlo, and they're burying his shoes.
It was such a callback to I was really surprised because he mentioned Laszlo Farnsworth's name before we got to that scene. And so I heard the name, and I'm like, it's so familiar, and it was driving me crazy. I finally had to ask Victoria.
I had to explain it to you, because you couldn't remember.
I had to ask Victoria, because I'm like, it's on the tip of my brain, but I can't think of it. And yes, in Clara...
And then you're like, what episode is this first mentioned in? I'm like, it is mentioned in Clara, when Eugene comes in, and then at the end of the episode, and Jack's just like, Sniff, well, you gotta tell me what you and Laszlo did with my shoes, and what you did with my shoes, and Whit's like, I didn't do that, it was Laszlo Farnsworth. He's like, you and Laszlo were in cahoots.
Yeah. Yes, which was in grade 4, he said, in Clara, which means it would have been probably quite imminent in terms of this story, where we are now. So Jack is the one who gave Whit the nickname, after a three-pronged nickname after his last name, him being Witty and Whit Sunday. And it only took a single day for it to catch on, too, apparently.
You have no idea the pile of... Actually, you probably would know better than anyone else. The pile of feels I got when I found out that Jack is the one who named Whit in the first place. And I was just like, you gave him his nickname, that's adorable. And this episode was 100% fan service. Can we both agree on that?
Yes, absolutely. And I did look it up.
Because it didn't really have too much plot, but it was just like straight fan service, and I have never been so okay with fan service. This is the kind of fan service I like.
The theme is actually what I was going to talk about next, because I really loved how the episode went over so much of the major stuff throughout Whit's childhood and talked about different themes for all of the things instead of trying to like shoehorn all of these different events to teaching the same common lesson, which it kind of did in a more meta way, but not in a specific way, which I'm really happy about. And we'll get to that later. I could not believe more super exciting things. I was like, dreams really do come true. They confirmed in audio canon Whit's birthday as October 1st. I was like, things just keep getting better.
And then we got the stuff with Jack, and the stuff with Jack was, like, so sweet at the end. We also got to find out that, we got stuff about, like, Jack's dad, some details on him.
Yeah.
And we got to hear Jack's mom, and she was such a sweetheart. And I really loved that last scene on Christmas, and I was just like, oh my gosh. And then they, like, bring him the gifts, and it's like, here's a journal, Jack, and stuff, and... he mentions, like, kind of like how he grew closer to God as he grew up. And I was thinking, like, it's because of that journal and stuff. And so it, like, connected so well with past episodes. The only times I would say that it didn't connect were with... I really, really wished that they gave us dates for when Fiona went blind, or at least mentioned it, because it only would have taken, like, 1 second to mention it. So I just kind of wanted to know where that fit into the timeline, because they did such a good job at, like, the general timeline. That was the only thing I wanted.
Well, we know it was somewhere between the two. It was in the previous 2 years before this episode, because it was after they moved to America, but obviously before this episode, because she was already blind. Whit's already a Christian. So we know that much, at least.
So I guess, like, Charlotte, was that her name?
Yeah.
Charlotte? Was, like, at summer camp or something like that when her mom went blind, which really would have sucked, to be honest.
I mean, they said, thank you God spans the course of several months while they were ferrying around different doctors.
But when Fiona wakes up, like, Harold's there and Whit's there, but Charlotte's not there. Was she, like, grounded or something like that, and she wasn't allowed to come out of the room under any circumstances?
Who knows? Maybe this is while she ran away, because, like, Whit wouldn't let her play with his toys.
So she ran away for several months?
Yeah.
Like,
she was at summer camp for part of it.
Or something like that? Like, she meets Christopher Walken in the woods and
she was at
survive.
She was at summer camp for part of it, and then part of it's when she ran away and other stuff like this and that. You know how life is.
And she was, like, staying at a friend's house for a really long time. There were actually quite a few funny scenes with Charlotte that made me laugh, like the when they were on the boat, and, like, I just love seeing sibling bickering between Whit and his sister, because it was, like, so perfect. it felt like young Jimmy and young Donna, but it was Whit, so that made it amazing, like even more amazing. Not that Jimmy and Donna aren't. And then he's just like, they're making jokes about the ship, and then Harold's just like, Whit, shut up, stop being a tiny jerk. And I'm just like, this episode's incredible.
So, yeah, like you said, they tied together a lot of things, bits and pieces we knew about Whit's childhood before. They gave us the precise dates for so many things, like the day that Whit met Jack, the day that Whit began his list of dreams that was featured in Great Expectations. We found out when Whit came up with the idea for the Bible Room mirror, which was a long time before he built it, obviously.
Something I always find interesting is it's easier for people who create content to do flashbacks than it is for them to just start at the beginning and move forward. Like, it's easier to have, like, a laid out plot and then just go back and then have a bunch of, like, backstory stuff and then just show that how that connects to things. And you know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
like,
it makes sense.
RVD did it.
Star
Wars did it. Although Star Wars did it kind of bad, but...
Yeah. I mean, it's... You know, it doesn't make sense to lay out all of your exposition prior to the inciting incident well before you actually get to the main story arc of your story, right? So, of course, you're going to want to start with the actual plot and then fill in exposition as you go.
Yeah.
You're not going to hook anyone otherwise. I really liked, and I feel like this is really the central theme of the episode, more so than how they talked about it, is that they established that Whit has this long-standing tradition, because of the journal, of pulling spiritual lessons out of everyday things that are happening to him. Because the things that Whit learned in the episode are all sorts of different, unconnected things all throughout the year that this episode spans. But the overall point is that through this, we see how Whit was slowly learning to take events each and every day, and at the end of the day reflect on them and think, this is what God taught me through what happened today. And the ability to pull spiritual lessons out of the things that happen to us is one of the biggest pieces of characterization that makes John Avery Whittaker who he is today. And so there was a really good piece of characterization to show how he slowly learned that skill and how that fits into the show and throughout his life. And to me, that's the overall lesson of the episode, really. Like, the main theme is, like, you know, looking at our life and seeing the things that God teaches us day to day.
And, like, Jack learns the same thing when Whit gives him his journal.
Yeah.
Eventually. It takes a little bit longer for Jack.
Yeah.
But...
Which basically is where the episode ends then, which I really liked how it was so concise that this episode covers from January 1st to Christmas, even though there were flashbacks to prior to that. But it was the perfect way to start off this year on the OIC by telling a story that happens over precisely 1 year from January to the end of December. So I thought that was really nice, even how it fits into the OAC then.
So, new Christmas episode, everybody.
I
actually thought the ending was really touching. I don't know about you. It was,
yeah. And I had the file that we used for our Whit lore video way back when. I had that open throughout this whole episode, and I was just constantly rewriting the section on Whit's childhood, updating it with all of the new information and dates and everything, and fitting things together with the new information. And it's
like dropping that truth hard.
The early section of that is very different now, so we may have to do an updated episode of the Whit lore thing at some point in the future for the Oddcast.
Lore 2.0.
Yeah. I mean, when we do those lores, there's a reason when we do BGTOs and lores and stuff that we always say, this is the lore for John Avery Whittaker up to episode wherever we are, because obviously that's going to change over time. So, that's the notes I had for the episode, and then I have some stuff for the online stuff as well. So in the video documentary, first we had Bob Smithhauser learning to do some motocross. He meets a father and son duo, and they go over the basics of riding as Bob tries to learn through imitation, because that was apparently what the theme of the episode was. And then Bob meets a bagpiper to learn about pipes, which is cool because they're an amazing instrument. And she plays Scotland the Great and Amazing Grace for him. And then they catch up with Justin, who is a young boy who was briefly in an old OAC video from last year in one of the sketches. And since then, he was hit with a car while he was longboarding. And so he talks about what happened to him. He broke 8 bones around the frontal and orbital areas of his skull. He had air in his skull, concussion, lots of bad stuff. So the OAC halted all comments for a few days, apparently, in honor of Justin a ways back, so that people could pray for him. And so he's doing much better now, obviously, and so he's on there and he talks about how his faith helped him through the experience, and now he's how he is now planning on becoming a youth pastor. The WebQuest also talked about how a while ago the OAC held the first annual John Avery Whittaker contest, where people nominated someone in their life who reflected Whit's qualities in their life. So the winner was Eldon Babcock, a guy from Saskatchewan who spent over 60 years imitating Christ and teaching kids about him. And I was like, hey, someone from Saskatchewan who, like, wow, Canadian winning and focus on the family contest. Since when's that a thing?
We've won contests by them before.
But you can never enter. Barely ever.
Not by them, by other people.
Exactly.
For Odyssey, okay.
It's very rare that you can submit things to a contest if you're not American. I really liked how the WebQuest, really like this, put a pretty heavy emphasis on the fact that, like, we learned so much about Whit's past today. Like, they know what we want, and they were clearly, like,
I told you, it's all
mentioning
fan
it
service.
a lot. I also realized this is the first episode that we've really been to Scotland, so that's cool. Another OAC country, although it was a very different than normal format. There is a lovely story on there about this 9-year-old whom God told to adopt a nursing home after he saw how lonely the people were there. And so he goes there several nights a week to hug people and pray with them and talk and play board games with them. And he even bought new slippers by himself for some of the residents and collected donations to get Christmas presents for all of the 215 residents there.
Wow.
And I really liked the blurb at the bottom of the article, which was very reminiscent of the episode The Nudge. And it said, when he was 9 years old, Eric heard God tell him to adopt a nursing home. Kids can hear God's voice, Eric says. I think he has plans for everyone, adults and kids. Indeed he does. God wants to use you too. Here are Eric's tips for listening to God. 1. Pray often and ask God to talk to you. 2. Stop talking and be a good listener. Don't give up if you don't hear him right away. 3. Make sure what you hear agrees with God's word. 4. Ask yourself, is this something Jesus would do if he were here in person? 5. Ask a parent or pastor if what you believe God is telling you makes sense. And 6. If so, do it. So it made me think of The Nudge a lot.
That's like The Nudge. I'm convinced that this kid wrote The Nudge.
Yeah.
Even though he would have been super young when it came out. I love that episode where Marvin's just like praying. He's like, God, please give me a sign. And there's like a strike of lightning. He's just like, anytime now, God.
All right.
Anytime.
Time for our game now from the WebQuest. So there is an activity in there with short fake journal blurbs from 8 characters on adventures in Odyssey. And you have to match them to the character. As soon as I saw that, I was like, if there's no references to, and lo, I am that fawn, I'll be very disappointed.
So are these actual, like, ones that have been read in the show?
No.
Okay.
But they contain trivia, which will lead you to know who wrote it.
You have to go through them slowly, because I can't read these for myself.
The thing that I really liked about it is that these journal entries had some really old-school, obscure callback trivia on the characters. I was really impressed at the trivia that they pulled together. So I wanted to see...
Devin, like, it's been all callbacks ever since album 53.
And so, more so than naming the entries who it's for, I wanted to see how many episodes you could name where the trivia originated from that they're mentioning in these quotes.
Oh, that's so evil! I thought this was going to be easy for a sec.
Okay, so there are 8 of these.
You know I'm bad with episode titles.
I won't tell you who the 8 choices of peoples are. I'll just read you. They're all main characters.
Okay, that makes it easier.
I
wasn't sure if I was allowed to ask that.
I will read you. Okay, so number 1. I didn't have many toys when I was a kid, but I did have an owl named Dr. Whit and an Irish setter named Artichoke. My grandpa is a Christian...
Wooten. Can't talk.
Is a Christian missionary in Africa. So
do I have to name those episodes?
If you want to. So, didn't have many toys when I was a kid.
The popsicle kid?
I actually thought that for a second first. No, it was Wooten's first episode, welcoming Wooten.
Ah,
because Connie wants to get him a Smiley Meal toy to help thank him for helping out at... Oh, wait, no, I guess it's Breaking Point then. Never mind.
Okay, this next one, I know, like, I remember the scene.
Owl named Dr. What?
I can't remember what the episode is, but it's that episode where Camilla gets a bird.
Yeah, for the birds. Irish setter named Artichoke. I'm not sure if that's in the audio series. Or if it's from, like, Clubhouse or something. Doesn't sound familiar to me.
That's... I want to say it's in the audio series, but I'm not
Does it sound familiar to you at all?
Maybe, but I could just be like...
I really don't think that it does for me, so I don't know. We can skip that one.
It might not actually. It's like this psychology term that I can't remember what it's called. Like, no, it's like... what do you call when you look back on something?
Memory.
It's like something bias. I can't remember what it's called.
I don't remember what kind of bias it is, but I know what you're talking about. And my grandpa is a Christian missionary in Africa, is of course...
Basset Hound!
Yes, okay. Journal number 2. The Captain Electric radio show was my favorite. I listened every Friday night at 7:30. I even purchased some Captain Electric spy equipment that I still have somewhere.
This is Whit.
Yeah. From the episode...
Okay, so I'm so bad with episode names right now because I'm really, really tired. I'm worse than usual right now. The Spy Who Bugged Me.
Yes, episode 400, I believe.
And is that the only mention?
Yeah.
That's the only one I heard.
I was really impressed with it because when I saw the character names, I'm like, how are they going to pick something for Whit that's not super obvious? But that was good by focusing on something like that. Number 3, I was an extra in a movie when I was a teenager. The film was shot at my school, so everyone was in it. I wanted to be on the set more, but I had a side job in a restaurant. These both reference the same episode. The working at a restaurant and being an extra in a movie.
Did you know who this was?
Yeah. It was a big deal to people finding out that this character was an extra in a movie that was shot at their school.
Is it Connie?
It is Connie.
Okay.
With both facts coming from...
I want to say 15 minutes.
Connie comes to town.
Wrong.
Her very first episode.
Oh, okay.
She tells Whit that she used to work in a restaurant, and when Tom is talking to Whit about how popular Connie has been, he mentions that the kids thought it was really cool that she was an extra in a movie. Or he tells that story not to Whit, to Connie.
And then Connie comes up and she was like, it was only a toothpaste commercial.
No, she was like, everyone was in it. It was a movie, not a commercial.
Okay.
Okay, number 4. I tried and failed to be a high jump champion in middle school. The truth is, I could never live... Oh, I forgot about this one.
Oh,
the truth is,
no,
I could
Devin!
never live up... I could never live up to
the... very flat.
Shush. The truth is, I could never live up to the track record set by my older brother. I sure do miss him.
That was uncalled for.
Who is it, Victoria?
It was Jason. It was Memories of Jerry.
Correct.
It's a really good episode.
Number 5. See what I mean? They picked really good stuff to pick on it. That's not like...
It's really obscure. But why would they do that to me?
Yeah. Number 5. My nicknames growing up included Short Stuff and Goggles. I shaved my head at the age of 15 following an unfortunate incident with an incubator. That last part, pretty sure that's also something they made up for this.
No, that's in an episode.
It is?
Yeah.
What episode?
I'm not sure which one, but I remember him saying it once.
I don't remember ever hearing that.
Yeah, he said that.
Anyways, the character is obviously...
Eugene, I already said that.
Short Stuff
and
comes
Short
from...
Stuff, that's The Graduate.
Yep, and Goggles
and
is
Goggles is from... You said it at the beginning of this. I did say it. That's what annoys me so much.
The...
Champ Camp.
Yeah.
Champ. The
champ of the camp.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's like Care Bears 2. Champ! I'm Camp Champ!
I don't remember
Dark Heart.
ever hearing anything about Eugene shaving his head because of an incubator incident. I don't remember the word incubator ever showing up in Adventures in Odyssey.
I'm pretty sure he said that before. Maybe it was when he shaved his mustache.
It says when he was 15.
Oh. No, I mean he mentioned it probably when he was shaving his...
Don't think so.
I don't know.
Anyways, number 6. Despite big challenges at home, I love spending summers with my best friend in North Carolina. We had all sorts of adventures there and even found pirate gold. That, kids, is called a segue.
Is it Joanne Allen?
Correct. Joanne Woodston Allen.
Oh, sorry.
Joanne Judith Woodston Allen.
Sorry.
Yeah.
Joe.
What episode could that be referencing to, Victoria?
Memories of Jerry.
Correct. Number 7. As a child, I got to know my great-grandparents, Porcelain and
People who don't know what we're talking about, we should actually probably say what that was. Jack, and it was Blackbeard's treasure.
Which is what we're going to be reviewing in a few minutes, yeah. Number 7. As a child, I got to know my great-grandparents, Porcelain and Swindon. I had to be careful when I went to their house because they love flowers and I'm allergic to carnations.
Penny?
No.
Who haven't we talked about yet?
As a child, I got to know my great-grandparents, Porcelain and Swindon. And she's allergic to carnations. I said it was a girl. I guess I spoiled that much.
It's not... Is it Katrina? Yes?
Yes.
Okay. You lagged there, so I didn't see you nod your head.
Yes, it is Katrina. Yes, her great-grandparents, Porcelain and Swindon, we know from...
From the episode where Eugene tries to slap Brandon in the face?
No, it is from Wrapped Around Your Finger, because that is where the ring that Armitage has the ring that Swindon gave to Porcelain. And like I said a little while ago, the name Porcelain is a joke because Armitage Shanks is named after a sink and toilet company.
Yeah.
Yeah. And we know that she is allergic to carnations from...
Oh, right. From... Eugene trying to court her, and I want to say it ended with a rabbit's foot, but I feel like I'm wrong.
I think it might be naturally I assumed, because he's like trying to give her gifts and Connie's trying to coach him.
Oh, right, yeah, it is naturally I assumed.
Yeah.
That's a good episode for Connie and Eugene. Not like necessarily shipping them, but just like their relationship in general.
Yeah.
And Whit's like, I thought you guys were dating or whatever.
This review is going a little overtime, but I don't care. Yeah, everyone gets to join along with us at home and trying to figure these out. And last one, number 8. My parents named me after the state where I was born. When I was a kid, I loved Boston cream pie just as much as I do now. Oh, and I named my dog Dinner Time.
Penny?
Yes. Pretty sure.
See, I wasn't sure about the last one, though. If you said main characters, and I wasn't sure if they would count Katrina as a main character.
Yeah, she is.
Because she hasn't shown up in a little while. But, like, yeah. I wasn't sure how, like, loose they were being with that term. Because when they do promotional stuff now, it's usually just 5 characters, Whit, Connie, Eugene, Wooten, and Penny, who get put on, like, the posters and stuff.
20, 48, 49, 50, 1, 2, 3, 4. Yeah, she's one of the mainest characters on the entire show.
Oh, okay.
She's probably in, like, the top 6 now in terms of number of episodes, so.
Has she been in more than Wooten, though? Probably not.
They're probably pretty close.
I mean, like, she has the advantage of being in the show for way longer than him, because she came in more frequently now. 19, I believe, was when she debuted.
Yeah, either way, I'm sure.
Wooten came in, like, album 34 or something, yeah.
Yeah, surely Wooten's trajectory is well past hers, so it's probably higher by now. Yeah, and for Penny, I don't think the Name My Dog Dinner Time is audio canon anywhere. And this did point out...
I don't remember that.
She said, named me after the state where I was born, so that explains why she was talking about Pennsylvania, even though her family is in Pittsburgh, which is not in Pennsylvania. She was.
And I brought that up in an episode that I don't know if you've recorded yet.
It hasn't aired yet, no. But the point is, she was born in Pennsylvania, and then her family must have moved. Or she was born while they were on vacation or something.
Who's spoiling things now, Devin?
Not a spoiler. Anyway, so yeah. So good job, Victoria, Jason, Penny, Jack, Wooten, Connie, Whit, Eugene, and Katrina.
Did I do worse than you thought I would, or better?
No, I mean, you got all of the things. I think Katrina's...
I didn't get Katrina. I think Katrina's was hard.
I was going to say it was the hardest one. And I knew...
Did you get Katrina's?
Yeah.
Darn you.
Okay, last thing to say about this episode. This bit of text from the web quest has me very excited. And I quote, "Creating the Journal of John Avery Whittaker was quite an adventure. Although our writers have known Whit's backstory for years, deciding which moments to share with club members posed a major challenge. We hope fans like this episode because there's so much more we could explore in other Young Whit episodes. Did you enjoy hearing about Whit's ancestors in Adventure 25? Maybe we'll meet more of them in a future episode."
I want more young Jack and young Whit.
I believe there's also a thing in the guide, and I think it is in my notes for Blackbeard's Treasure, and we'll touch on that says originally when, we'll touch on that later, but it basically said that when they created Blackbeard's Treasure, they'd intended that to be as a jumping off point to create like a whole series, like sub-series of episodes exploring Whit as a young boy, and in the guide, they were like, maybe it'll come to fruition one day. And it just so happens it did come to fruition in this very episode. So it turns out it was a great idea to pair these two episodes together for review before we even knew it.
And you didn't want to pair these two together. I was the one who fought for it.
That's true.
You wanted to put this one with a different one. I can't remember what it was.
Yeah, I can't remember either. Anyways.
Was it like Pink Flamingos?
No. It was either Recollections or Clara or Mortal Coil Part 1.
It was Clara, I think.
So, final thoughts on this episode, Victoria?
This episode was really good. Part of me thinks that I should deduct points for it being complete fan service, but I'm okay with it being this the kind of fan service I like. Like when I watch stuff like with, I don't know, I don't like things with people showing off not wearing too much clothes fan service. That makes me feel awkward. And I don't... Yeah, fairy tale. That makes me feel awkward. I don't like it. Keep it away from me. This is the kind of fan service I like, where it delves into the lore and the world building and the characters and their development. This is good fan service. I will not give it a perfect thing because I'm still really upset that they didn't say when Fiona was blinded. It's like 4.9 for me, personally. Yeah, but like 0.99999 with like that little line above it that you see in math.
So 5 is what you're saying then.
Because of the last scene with Jack, so I guess it rounds up to 5.
It doesn't even round. 4.9 repeat is literally equal to 5, mathematically speaking.
What's your rating?
I am going to give it a 5 as well. The only thing I could say against it is that there was kind of like the weird tonality, like you said, where they put in the Cupid bit and the wisdom bit.
Yeah,
they were kind of like they didn't really fit in there. But other than that...
The part with the wisdom actually made me laugh a little bit.
Other than that, this episode was like, it's exactly what we wanted for so long. We've heard that before the show even started, they had all of this stuff planned out, and they finally gave us so much of it at once. We've had so many scattered bits of Whit's story, and this tied so many of them together. It gave us the order. It explained things that explain how they relate to each other and explained some of the questions that we've had. It canonized a bunch of stuff that's been up in the air, like Whit's birthday being October 1st, him having a sister. It gave us tons of new, like, really core information, like Whit's mother's name, how she died, Whit's grandfather's name, the town where he used to live, the age that he moved to America. So many huge key things. And it also gives dates, specific dates and ages for so many key events, including the day that he met Jack. I believe it was May 2nd of the year that he was 10. And so it just gives us so much information that we've been wanting for so long. It is amazing, fantastic, so good. In addition to all of that, in terms of the lesson, they did a really good job. They dropped in tons and tons of like small mini lessons every couple of minutes based on whatever day we're talking about. And like I said, it turns into this overall cumulatory theme of like looking at the things in your life and being able to get God to help you like understand things. What is God trying to teach me through each and every experience that I have in my life, and how can I grow from this as a person? Which is not only a great theme, but the fact that we see Whit learning it as a young boy shows us how he kind of learned that lesson, which is one of the key things about Whit as a character. And so it's a huge thing in terms of the actual development of Whit's character throughout his life, and not just a random theme that he learned. So it's like so good in all of those aspects. Yes, Victoria?
I just want to kind of build on what you're saying and point out that, like, every single lesson that he learns in this, we see applying in him, like, he applies it in the present. And, like, you know, while listening to it, like, one of the reasons this episode's so good, especially with the lessons, is that you know for a fact that these lessons actually stuck with him throughout his whole life. And it's not like where you're watching a show and they're just like, that was the moral of the episode. And then they just kind of, like, forget about it in another episode, then they have to, like, rehash it or something like that. He actually, like, pays attention and he listens to everything that he learns and he, like, contemplates on it. And, yeah, he doesn't just, like, brush it away.
Yeah. It was so good. Okay, so yeah, 5 out of 5 across the board. This episode was amazing. Recommend it for everyone.
I want more Jack. Jack's one of my favorite characters.
It's worth getting the OAC just to hear this episode.
I agree with that.
All right.
This one, Follow Me. This is the wait, no, I've heard so there's 2 episodes of the OAC that I've heard, I believe. The other one is Walk This Way.
For this year, you mean?
Yeah, for this year. And it's strong start.
Yes.
It's very, very strong start. I was going to say this one's my favorite of the year so far, and it still is, but I also liked Walk This Way.
Okay, so now that we've been talking for a really long time, we need to turn you over so we can talk about Blackbeard's treasure and talk about more young Whit, and mostly talk about all of the stuff we learned from the Journal of Aviary Whittaker that helps us understand Blackbeard's treasure a lot better. So, Let's turn you over to that right now. And we're back now, here to talk about episode 297, Blackbeard's Treasure, written by Phil Lawler.
So, in this episode, Jack goes on vacation with Whit. Hey, it's Aram!
It was Mom and Dad. I always forget that that's the Aram sound because I'm used to it, like, as my text tone. Oh, I'm not sure if I said Dave Arnold wrote the last episode, because Dave is amazing. He also wrote The Cure recently, which was... But,
really good.
Yeah, this was Phil Lawler. Sorry, go on. What happens in this episode?
So in this episode, Jack goes on vacation with Whit, and Jack is scared of ghosts and other spooky things. So then they go into this cave. They're kind of in a rustic, pirate-ish town. They visit Whit's great
North Carolina.
Uncle? Or just normal uncle?
Great uncle, yes.
Great uncle. Okay, yeah. I have a good memory. I haven't listened to this one in a while.
It is his uncle. It's Jason's great uncle, so it's Whit's uncle.
Darn it. But Jason's his own grandpa, Devin.
It's true. So it's actually Jason's son.
Yeah, so they go visit Jason's son. This is really convoluted. And so he's the sheriff. And so they decide to go out sailing one day. They come across this pirate cave. There's gold in it. And then they run into some hoodwinklums who escape, or they're let off from the prison that...
Well, one of them.
Yeah, one of them is that the sheriff was in charge of, Jason's son. And so then they kidnap Whit and Jack when they find out that they found some pirate treasure, but they ran off because they thought the ghost of Blackbeard was there, and it's really hard to explain concisely. Basically, they kidnap him, bring him there, and then the guy who's Blackbeard scares off the guys, and there's bats and stuff. Everything works out, and then they get gold. They get the monies. And then they pay for college with the monies. And it all starts because they find the monies, and then Jack tells the story. This happened in the period when Whit was in the Middle East.
Yes.
So Jack's the one telling the story.
It was really odd order to tell all the events of that story, but sure.
Yeah. That was like my worst summary ever.
So, like you pointed out a few minutes ago, they did a phenomenal job at matching the Journal of Aviary Whittaker, young Whit and Jack, to sound like these ones from back in 1995.
They sound completely identical. If you have the OAC, listen to the clips of the kids back to back, and they sound like identical. I was so impressed.
Blackbeard's Treasure.
And like I said, I haven't listened to Blackbeard's Treasure in, I can't remember how long, but I remember everything that happens in it. So when I first listened to the Journal of Whit, I was just like, they got identical sounding peoples.
Yeah. Journal of Whit came out this year. Blackbeard's Treasure came out 21 years ago.
I'm honestly convinced that they time traveled the children and brought them into the future to record lines and then sent them back.
Yeah, it's really impressive. So, like I said before, there's already so much more that we know about this episode now. So, Jack says that he and Whit were about 10 when this story happened, but we know that couldn't be precisely because Whit had only met Jack on May 14th of the year when he was 10.
So we said about, could be 11.
Well, that's what I'm saying. So we know it wasn't precisely 10 because they'd only met on May 14th of that year when Whit was 10. So his parents and Jack's mother didn't meet until Christmas of that year when Whit was 11 because his birthday's October 1st. So Jack wouldn't have gone on such a long trip with Whit before their parents had met, presumably. So that probably means that this was the next summer when Whit was 11 going on 12 that October. See, there's already so much more we know now. It's so exciting. I'd also never thought before about the fact that Jason has a great-uncle Randy there, which means he is presumably Harold's brother, given that he lives in the U.S., and we know now that Harold originally grew up in North Carolina. Randy lives in North Carolina.
You're just so happy about all of this.
Which is actually interesting. I could have sworn they call Randy Sheriff Whittaker at some point in the episode. They never say his last name is Whittaker. So it's not absolutely confirmed that he's related on the Whittaker side, but given...
he doesn't have an accent, so
he doesn't have
I don't think he's Scottish.
He doesn't have an accent, and he lives in the same state where Harold also grew up. So I'm pretty sure he's Harold's brother.
Yeah.
And that means
I would agree on that.
It's probably also likely that Evelyn, Whit's cousin from Hear Me, is on the Whittaker side as well, I would imagine.
Do you think that's Randy's son? Daughter, I meant?
Could be. That's what I was going to say.
What's the name of the other guy? The deputy.
His name is Arnie.
Okay, when starting Gravity Falls, Deputy Durland remind me of Arnie so much. Like, their voices sound very similar and they have similar personalities.
Well, it could be because Randy and Arnie were like a very big Andy Griffith Show reference, and possibly they are as well. So that could be
everything in this show comes back to the Andy Griffith Show.
It really does.
Like Pokenberry Falls.
Yeah, so Yule Mosby is spending 30 days in jail for a drunken bar fight, which seems like a really long time. I don't know if he like shanked someone to death or something, but I don't know why 30 days seems like a really long time.
Every single time, both you and me growing up, because we watched Zack and Cody, and anyone else who watched Zack and Cody, when they're being taken by Mosby, and then Whit just yells like, "Mr. Mosby!" I'm always like, "Mr. Mosby!" And I'm like, "Get out of my hallway!" And stuff like that.
I don't even think about that when I hear that. Interesting.
You and I talked about that once when you were little.
Probably a long time ago.
I said, that's what I think of every single time I hear him yell Mr. Mosby. And you're like, me too! But I guess not anymore.
So. So, it is also worth noting, from things that we know now, that Whit was clearly used to being called Whit by the time that this episode happens, so this means that it is probably just over a year after Jack came up with it. In Great Expectations, in album 56, Emily Jones visits Whit when he's a child and comments on how, and Whit says, that the kids at school call him Whit, but he's not sure he'll ever get used to it. So given the way that Whit talks about his nickname at Christmas in the Journal of Whit, by the time he was 11 to his parents, that means that Emily probably visited Whit in the Imagination Station sometime in the first 6 months after he met Jack. Yeah.
You're just so happy about this, but I can't really comment on that because I am too. I mean, you're happier than I could possibly ever be.
I like understanding things, and this is exactly what I mean. All of the pieces are fitting together now. It created this framework, and now we can... This is why
I prefer that kind of fan service over people just, looking society's definition of pretty or whatever. Because, that, in the end, it gives you nothing. This actually gives you knowledge and a broader understanding.
I love the way you worded that.
It
gives you nothing. Physical beauty is worthless. It fades and withers like the fickle flower.
You know what I mean? Like, if we're watching Fairy Tale and then they show, like, Lucy in a bikini or something like that, I'm not gonna feel like I have a new understanding of life or something like that.
Yes, it's true.
Yeah.
Okay, so as Jack says, the lesson of this episode wasn't really talked about a lot at the time of the incident. It was mostly the short conversation about Whit not believing in ghosts because he's a Christian. While it's not super emphasized in the episode, I feel like it is worth admiring how confident Whit was in his faith to be so bold against what would have actually really clearly seemed like a deranged pirate ghost coming after them. And he was, despite the fact that that's actually really strongly what it looked like, he was very confident in his faith at such a young age, which is pretty impressive, I have to say. He was very dead set on that, despite the fact that there's like a glowing, flaming old man looking like Blackbeard chasing him down like an underwater cave with Blackbeard's treasure in it and an actual human skeleton. So,
and his name is actually like the same name as Blackbeard's.
Yeah, we'll get to that in a minute. Because
that's weird.
That's always one of the things that's annoyed me about this episode, but we'll get to that in a second. On the topic of Mr. Edward, of Ned Teach / Edward Teach, on the topic of him, I'm so glad that this town has an old man who has nothing better to do all day than dress up in his pirate cosplay, go into his underground cave, and moan angrily at children. If that's not life goals, I don't know what is. He's old and he's alone and he just decides to spend his time into like dressing up like a pirate and going into his bat cave and waiting for kids to find in there so he can run at them and angrily and moan. It's like, because he doesn't even start out by talking, he just goes like... It's really funny when you think about it.
Well, when you say it that way, it's really funny. Like, do you think, two things. One, do you think that, like, that's what he was voted for in his yearbook when he graduated? Like, most likely to dress up like a pirate, go in a cave and moan at children to scare them off?
Probably. Yearbook superlatives can be very specific sometimes.
Yeah, and then he goes to his high school reunion. He's like, hey, guys, turns out you were right. And he's like, what do you guys do with your lives? And we're like, oh, we go on our lawns and we yell at children to get off our lawn. He's like, I dress up in my pirate cosplay and moan at them to get out of my cave from my gold.
So, on the topic of the name then, because like I said, this has always really bothered me about this episode.
It's bothered me
I
too.
assume
I've never liked his name being Ned Teach.
Sorry?
I've never liked that his name was Ned Teach before.
I assume that
Is it Thatch or
Teach. Well, that's the way they say it. I've always assumed this problem, it's like a twofold problem. One thing is a plot hole that I think is because they cut a line and didn't realize it left a plot hole behind. And the other is just a weird pronunciation. So Jack finds a book in the library that says Blackbeard's real name is Ned Teach is how he says it. Everything I've ever heard about Blackbeard says it's Edward Teach. Maybe it's pronounced Teach, but it's spelled Teach. Like, I am going to teach you this today. Well,
I mean, like, what nationality was Blackbeard?
British, I believe.
So, might not be the same pronunciation.
Pretty sure it's Teach, and also...
Well, they're American, and we had a conversation right before we started filming this about American versus
English spelling, not pronunciation. But, and also the fact that his name was Edward, and they said his real name was Ned. Technically, Ned is short for Edward. I don't think anyone in the 1600s would have shortened their name to Ned like that. So, I mean, that's just semantics. The confusing thing is that when Jack reads this, he says that the name is just like that thing that they found in the cave. And it later turns out that the owner of the property has the same name, Edward Teach, or Ned Teach, or whatever. But there is no earlier scene where the boys find whatever thing Jack is referring to that had that name on it.
Was it, like, on the wood or something?
They never say anything. Jack says it's just like that name on the thing in the cave. But that's the only time that it's mentioned in the episode. They never say anything about finding a name on anything earlier than that. So, like I said, it's a problem. I'm assuming that there was a line or a couple lines that they cut out of the episode and they didn't realize that it left that hole.
I mean, like, is that still when they, like, cut it on the actual table with the...
Back then, this was 95, so probably?
So that might have been an accident.
Well, I don't think they would
have cut the line. It might have literally ended up on the cutting room floor.
I imagine that they just cut it out and they didn't realize that there was a line that referenced that specific line that would make a mistake, and so it just got left out. There's other episodes that have done similar sorts of things before, but that's always annoyed me because it's like, it doesn't make sense, and also they pronounced it really weirdly, so...
I've done that in my writing sometimes, where I put, like, the character sat on the ground, and then I'm, like, rereading it, and then right after that, it says, like, they sighed and they sat on the ground, like, one paragraph later. And I'm like, you're already sitting on the ground.
Got up and sat down again. Gotta stretch your legs out.
Yeah, I made a joke, like, just stood up just to sit down again, just because they were so done with the situation.
So, I want to know what Jocko was doing for, like, however many days it was that Yule was in jail. Was he just hanging around and just sitting outside the prison or something?
He doesn't seem like getting in bar fights, but I guess that's what Jocko got in prison for.
That's what Yule got in prison for, yeah.
Yeah, that's what
So Jocko, he doesn't seem like the type to have the initiative to do anything without Yule telling him to. So I don't know.
Usually just like eating or something. I don't know. He doesn't sound very smart by the way they characterize him.
Yeah.
Which they make him a dumb thug, for lack of a better term. I'd like to call him something else, but that's what they make him.
I've always found it funny and bizarre how when Whit tells Yule and Jocko about the cave being haunted, Jack's like, it is? And Whit's like, yes, remember? As if he says it like Whit just improvised this plan and not like they didn't actually see the ghost of Blackbeard in the cave just a few hours prior.
Maybe like Jack got so scared it just like scared the memory out of him.
Maybe. It's so weird because it makes it sound like...
It scared certain memories out of him, so he forgot that it was haunted, but he learned that it was named Ned Teach in the process.
And then it came back. Yeah, so... Yeah, it's weird. Whit says it exactly like he was, like, coming up with this plan and he's trying to clue Jack into it, but Jack, they both of them actually did see what they thought was the ghost of Blackbeard in the cave, so he should, when he hears that, he should be like, yes, it is. Because Jack did actually believe already that it was haunted, so that's kind of weird.
I think the reason he was surprised was because it was Whit saying it.
Yeah.
And Whit said he didn't believe in that stuff. So
but then Whit responds with like,
"Are you serious?
Remember?
I bet you didn't believe in that stuff." And he's just like, "Yeah, now I do. Shut up, Jack."
I guess so. I guess that makes sense. It's just it comes off really funny in that context.
Yeah.
I
love how like that's how people always portray, like, when they're acting or something like that, or they, like, kick someone under the table so they can say something, where it's, like, so obvious to the audience.
I guess it's
it's never obvious to other characters for some reason.
I guess it's supposed to be, like, dramatic irony. That's the right term, right? From, like, the audience notices something, but the people on stage don't. It's like stage whispering, right? We can all hear it when obviously they'd hear it, but it's part of the suspension of disbelief of the medium that you're telling the story in.
Yeah, and I guess it's actually kind of two kinds of irony, I guess. It'd be situational and dramatic, I suppose.
Okay, Miss.
Dramatic, like, is when the audience knows something that the characters don't know. And situational is when you think something's going to happen one way and it doesn't. Like, you might think that the characters would pick up on, like, the very obvious plan being made, but they don't. So.
Yeah. Point.
And then there's just irony, verbal irony, when people are being sarcastic. Those are the three types.
Yes. Also
English major!
Also known as sardonic irony, which Eugene calls it at one point. Anyways, Yule also says in that same scene, "I've come this far, I ain't let it slip away now," with regards to going into the cave as the tide was rising. Which makes it sound like this was something that he'd been working towards for years and not a plan that he came up with like 30 minutes ago. He's like, I've come so far, I can't let it slip through my fingers now. It's like, it's been 30 minutes that you came up with this idea. It's not like you spent the last 8 years conniving for this moment. Like, I mean, sure, you kidnapped 2 kids, so you did come that far. That's admittedly something.
I think he was talking about, like, in distance-wise, because they had to,
I've come so far, I've come all the way from over there.
He's like, we started all the way over there, and we came all this far.
We started from the bottom, back. Now we here.
Like, who was rowing? It was Jack and Whit. were rowing.
I think so.
Yeah, so if I was Jack or Whit, I would have been like, I was the one who was rowing, you jerk! You didn't do any of the work, the only thing you did was kidnap us.
It is pretty funny. And yes, on that topic, Ewell was an absolute fool for doing what he did with the tide coming into the cave going in there, because all 4 of them very well could have died. It was entirely possible that the tide could have, like, flooded the entire cave.
So, like, what does Ned do? Because he was in the cave the whole time.
Well, I'm assumed that the cave eventually leads to, like, you know, a ladder that is in the floor of his living room or something. It must lead to the surface somewhere on his property.
Do you think he's ever like, I want to go swimming, so then he jumps into the pool in his living room?
Hopefully not, because he would probably drown.
He would probably... well, I mean, if it was going down at that point.
That's true. It doesn't do that all the time. Good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, so like you said, Jocko and Arnie, both of them are so dense that it's painful. I know that at least Arnie was supposed to be a Barney parody from the Andy Griffith Show, but still, it's like, it's... Stop.
Do not pass go.
Like I said, I really want to know more about Ned Teach over here. Like, how... I have so many questions about him. How does he know when someone's in the cave? How long does it take him, after he figures that out, that someone's there, to get into all of that Blackbeard getup? Does he wear it all of the time so that he's always ready? Does he enjoy scaring people off like this, or does he just like wearing that all the time and running around and yelling at people?
Well, he clearly doesn't like people, so maybe he's like, he makes a game out of it. Maybe he lost a bet once.
Yeah.
So Randy, that's the name of
The
Jason's
sheriff.
son, right?
Yeah.
So
Finally.
Clearly knows that
Killed the fly.
Ned lives there, so I like to think that him and Randy are like bridge buddies or something like that, and he lost a bet or something, so he has to like wear the pirate getup for like a month, and he has like, just because he's super paranoid and he doesn't like having people on his property, has like this crazy set of like tripwires, so then he knows when people come in, because I don't think they would have had surveillance camera technology in caves back then that was up to code or whatever.
Yeah.
So, yeah, and then he's just like, oh man, I gotta put on my cosplay and scare children.
Yeah.
What a good person I am.
Anyways, back to my...
I'm trying to retcon all the mistakes that you're bringing up, Devin, and it's really hard.
Back to my dramatic rhetorical questions. That was question number 4. Number 5, they said he just wants people off his land, but surely he must enjoy this if he puts so much showmanship into the way that he does it. What did he think when he somehow realized that there were people in the cave for a second time in one day? How long did it take him to realize that the kids were in danger and he had to save them? If he has such a flair for the dramatic, why hasn't he recreated the Batcave in perfect detail down there, honestly? Actually, I wonder, what year did Batman comics start? I should look this up, because...
Oh, you're making Ned Teach such an amazing character,
he's
Devin.
underappreciated.
He has such a flair for the dramatics. Do you think that, like...
May 1939, so yes, Batman... Or, no,
yeah,
Batman's
quite old.
Batman would not have existed yet when this episode happened, because this episode would have happened probably around 7 years before 1939. When
I like
Batman
to think
first
that
appeared.
Ned Teach was the inspiration for Batman, but that's just me.
Probably. Whit was a writer. Maybe he wrote about this story, it got published, and then someone's like, oh, Batman! There are even bats in his cave.
I know, it's so perfect.
Yeah, and those are the notes I have about the episode.
Oh my gosh. I think the episodes that have become the best in retrospect after we talked about them, just by like coming up with really weird random crap to talk about, were Soaplessly Devoted, and probably this one. Soaplessly Devoted is probably my favorite review that we've ever done.
The Whittaker approves.
The Whittaker approves, and it was...
I may be a duchess, but I'm also a woman.
A woman! See, I'm so glad in retrospect that we lost our like recordings for that original review, because we wouldn't have had that otherwise.
Yeah.
Do you think that, like, because Jack said that he visited that place with Whit often.
Every year.
Didn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I hope that there are more, like, in this new series. Maybe there's more episodes with them, and there's gonna be more Ned Teach.
Hopefully.
They're like, let's go TP his cave or something like that.
Ned Teach. Oh, right. There are also two, or I guess basically one thing in the official guide about this episode. Behind the scenes, Blackbeard's Treasure. Blackbeard's Treasure, as I mentioned earlier, was meant to be a pilot episode for a spin-off series of adventures featuring young Whit. The series didn't materialize, ... but it still could. The name Ewell Mosby is a combination of two Civil War generals, Richard Ewell and John S. Mosby. Any resemblance between the names of Sheriff Randy and Deputy Arnie and another sheriff and deputy from a popular 1960s television sitcom about a small southern town is purely intentional. So, yes, because of course from the Andy Griffith Show, you had Sheriff Andy, who became Sheriff Randy, and Deputy Barney, who became Deputy Arnie.
So I have another theory, because I can't let this go.
I love that we unintentionally reviewed this with the Journal of Aviary Whittaker when the special stuff literally says that this was supposed to be a pilot for a spin-off series about young Whit. They're like, it never happened. Maybe it still could someday. Who knows? And then they finally, they've done other young Whit episodes, but nothing like the Journal of Avery Whittaker, which they then said after that online that there could be more episodes like this. So
there better be more. There better be more.
What if each episode was another year of Whit's life? Imagine that.
Oh, that would be really interesting.
Anyways, go on, sorry.
Maybe Ned was off to a costume party, and then, he heard people come in. He's just like, oh, I'm going to the costume party. So he starts, groaning. He's just like, I can't believe this! Ah! And then they hear him, yelling, and they're like, oh my gosh, it's Blackbeard, and then they run out, and then he's like, wait, I'm not Blackbeard, and then he comes home from the costume party, and he's just like, there better not still be people in this darn cave, and then he sees some drowning kids, and he's just like, what is this irresponsible children? And he, yanks them out, he's like, get off my property, so that would explain.
Yeah. Him going to a costume party definitely explains, this whole persona of wanting to be left alone and hating everyone.
Yeah.
Definitely seems like the type of guy to go to costume parties.
I think he was, forced to go by friends.
That makes sense. So much sense. I'm sure he has lots of friends.
From the aforementioned bridge club that he's
there
in
you go. It all
Randy.
makes sense now.
Yeah.
The circle of stupidity is complete.
Darn you, Devin. You're mean.
Shout out to the end of Homestuck.
Anything else that we...
Nope. I guess I'll go first for final thoughts this time then.
Okay. I'm okay with that.
So, yeah. This episode has had so much added to it by the Journal of Aviary Whittaker now.
So everything with Jack, you kind of can look at it in a new light now that we... Actually, Jack's entire character, now that we know the backstory with his parents and everything about him is so much more interesting. Which really says something because he's already one of the most interesting characters in the series, arguably, in my opinion.
So, this episode, it's great to hear stuff from young Whit, especially in the context of when this episode came out, because this is right after, Whit's gone now, we have Jack appearing, and we're starting to realize, hey, we might finally get to hear more about what Whit was like as a kid. It opened, like they said, it was intended to be a pilot, because bringing Jack into the show opened this entire font of wealth of knowledge about young Whit and all these possible stories that we could hear about.
And the thing was, people were really upset and they really missed Whit. So in this way, they didn't have to freak out as much while being on the search for a new actor for Whit, and they could still have Whit in the series and we could still learn more about him.
Yeah.
In this case, we could even learn more about him than we would normally, just him teaching kids lessons.
It was a very clever way to continue to include Whit in the episodes even while Hal was gone and they were looking for a replacement. It was a clever idea. They executed it very well. I'll always be annoyed about the Ned Teach thing.
Can I just also say that I think it made listeners grow closer to Jack? Because if they were a little hesitant and they didn't really know, what to think about him, this way they were, like, drawn in by the stories and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
and they got to see that, like, he teaches lessons in the same way, and he can give us new knowledge that we wouldn't otherwise have.
Yeah,
and we also get, like, more lesson stuff in Red Wagons and Pink Flamingos.
And it helps us to see, like, what the relationship actually was and stuff. And that, like, he's not just some guy who used to know Whit. Like, they really were best friends. Which is why Whit mentioned him before now, you know?
Yeah, exactly. Just like Jason being mentioned all the time. Just like Whit's sister being mentioned all the time. Especially in Thank You, God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What else can I say about this episode? It was a cool way of also tying into the future, how they mentioned that by selling the coins that they were able to pay most of their way through college using the money from that. I really like how that helps tie it more into figuring out more stuff about both of their futures after that. Because we already know more stuff as well about there. We know both schools that they attended and all of that stuff.
Especially Jack, because going back to Journal of Aviary Whittaker, we know Jack wasn't especially wealthy growing up.
Good point.
So that especially would have, like, definitely helped with him going to college.
Good point.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it does add a lot to thinking about, like, if Jack is, you know, really lacking for a father figure in his life that we know now.
Whit became his father figure.
Yeah, and obviously spending a lot of time with Whit's family and even people like Sheriff Randy and other stuff that, you know, that Whit was able to bring him into the fold of his life and extend all of those, like, paternal influences onto Jack.
I just, like, know what I want more than a Whit spin-off series about, like, young Whit? I want a young Jack spin-off series where, like, Whit goes to his house and then just, like, Jack's hanging out there and he's, like, talking to Fiona, or, like, Jack's having a bad day and stuff and, like, issues with his dad, and Harold's just like, let's go have a talk, Jack, and I'll just be, like, sitting there super emotional, and I'll be like, oh my gosh, I need this in my life. So, what do you think would be better, Young Whit or Young Jack spin-off series?
I prefer Young Whit, but that would also already include a lot of Young Jack in it. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'll give this episode...
We need this.
4.5.
I think that is a very fair rating. I'll give it the same
4.6. 4.6, I'd say.
I'm giving it 4.7.
All right. So, I believe that is all for this time.
On the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.
Exactly. Next
time.
I don't think we picked something to do next time yet.
Oh, no.
Oops.
Oops.
It's a surprise. This isn't even like when we record episodes well in advance, so we don't know yet. This is literally like the next episode. We don't know what we're doing next time.
We never plan things out.
If you want to know, look down in the description, because it's always in the second paragraph of the description. And I also put it in the text I add on Facebook when I post it on our Facebook page.
And I think most of you people look at our Facebook page.
If you don't, there's a link to it down in the description as well as links to, like, everything else that is connected to us, almost everything else. So, hit that up. Yeah.
Go listen to my thing.
Yeah, I posted that on the Facebook page. Look at Victoria's audio drama that she made. She made it all by herself. She's like...
an audio drama I made, recorded, voice acted in.
She's like our very own Bob Hoose, or Jonathan Crow, or Rudy Hare, or any other sound designer.
Or Tommy Wiseau.
Yeah.
Up there with everyone else.
Anyways.
My acting's better than his. Hey.
So, until next time, thank you for joining us on our side of the YouTube. I've been Devin Francis, also known as Leonard Meltzner.
And I'm not talking to you for a long time.
And you've been watching the Adventures in Odyssey Oddcast.